exposing the New World Order scumbags. The Pork Chop Report with your host, Ken Coe.
Gregory Mannarino is a market analyst, professional trader, and has a huge following on YouTube. He is one of the most accurate person I know when it comes to the markets, and the most accurate person when it comes to the Feds. Welcome, Greg.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Greg, welcome back to YouTube, and congratulations on making Google's blacklist.
Well, they made my life a living hell, but it seems like a lot of people, they were so upset that I was leaving. I got killed. I got bombarded with people. Greg, please come back. So you know what? I'm gonna stick it out and deal with them, at least for now, until something else better comes along. But they're like the Gestapo. I mean, they honestly are. Facebook, YouTube, Google, they're all in cahoots with each other, and they don't want people like me. And there's like 400 I'm in the top 400 of websites, traderschoice.net and YouTube that Google does not want people to go to. So that says something. I'm proud to be on that list.
I want to go back to one of your earlier articles called Global Debt and a Human Bubble. Can you summarize that article? What's it about?
Sure. Sadly, the environment that we are in is it's not real. It's been engineered by a debt-based economic model that is going to fail us at one particular time. In other words, we've borrowed cash from the future to build the environment that we are in. And without a continually adding of more debt into the system, pulling more of it from the future, we can't sustain where we are. It's a pretty basic concept, and we've all been hearing about the problems with the debt, and they can never fix it. Once they try to fix it, that's it. The system will collapse. People don't understand when they hear, well, why can't we pay off the debt? Why can't we do that? It won't work. The system demands that debt be borrowed into existence in perpetuity in greater and greater amounts. That's just the way it functions. It's not a wealth-based system. At one particular point here, when we max out that credit card, when we cannot borrow anymore, we're going to run into a resource issue. That's really what this whole thing comes down to. And unfortunately, just as we've created a bubble in the debt, we've created a bubble with regard to population, a human population bubble, which would not exist if we weren't in this kind of engineered environment being fostered by central banks who are determined to keep their product, which is debt, being bartered into existence. So it's a very frightening prospect to think about that we could face a moment here where resources become scarce. We can't borrow any more cash anymore. And that will create a correction, unfortunately, in the global population. It's a terrible prospect, but a very real one that people need to start thinking about.
What I always remember that article you wrote, and that's very scary line in it. You said this global human bubble will burst along with the debt bubble, and tens of millions of people in every continent around the world will die. Can you just explain that a little more?
Sure. Again, it comes back to the debt-based system. If we cannot continue to borrow from the future in greater and greater amounts just to sustain where we are, it's going to boil down to a resource problem where you're going to have factories shutting down, people aren't going to get paid. The modes of transaction are going to vaporize. The dollar has the potential to reach its intrinsic value of zero, which all fiat currencies eventually do. So it will create a situation which can literally send us back to the Stone Age in many, many ways in a worst case scenario. And again, I can't imagine that we're not going to walk right down that path. We've seen this before. I think the most recent one that people probably have in mind is this whole thing in Venezuela. They're eating dogs and cats in the street. These people, their currencies is worthless. We've seen that happen in other countries as well. I think if most people are probably old enough to remember the USSR. They had a similar situation over there. They survived it. And the reason for that is their currency was not the world reserve. Being that the US dollar is the world reserve currency, there's not going to be a way to get away from this. And unfortunately, the people that are going to suffer the most here are people that have gotten used to this cushy lifestyle, that are living underneath this gargantuan bubble in debt. Now, it's not just Greg Mannarino saying this anymore. This is people like Alan Greenspan, the former Fed chair, is saying the debt is in a bubble. And that has caused bubbles to develop all over the place here. The stock market's in a bubble. Housing is in a bubble. We have inverse bubbles, gold, silver, other commodities here. When the dollar melts down as being part of the debt, the dollar is a unit of debt. It is an unbacked liability being dispersed by a bankrupt government here. When if it reaches its true value, which again is zero at one particular point, you can just imagine the pandemonium that has the potential to unfold here on a global scale. People won't know what to do. They will do anything to survive at that point, and it's very horrible to think about.
Thanks for that. Now, Greg, what the heck is happening to the U.S. dollar?
Well, the U.S. dollar, man, I've been covering the dollars probably since the end of this. The dollar peaked in December, and since that time, the dollar has been losing value. Now, this is multifactorial, what we're seeing. The number one reason why the dollar is doing what it's doing is because the Federal Reserve has promised to kill it. The Federal Reserve has said they're going to do whatever they need to do to create inflation. That means they're going to add digits to a screen. They're going to print bills out of thin air. And what people need to understand is when the Federal Reserve does this, when the Federal Reserve decides to add X amount of dollars to a digital screen or print X amount of dollars, those dollars don't come out of their printing press or are added to that digital screen with any value at all. They have to steal value, a fraction of value from every existing other bill. So when that happens, the currency loses its purchasing power. So the Fed is on a binge. They've been on this binge to weaken the dollar. So it's a trajectory that is not going to stop. We just got a blip higher with regard to the dollar. I told people it was going to happen. I think it's going to resume the downward trajectory because the Fed is going to kill the dollar. They can't create inflation because our economy, despite the fact that we keep hearing how good it's doing, is not going anywhere. There's no money velocity anymore. That is the rate that cash is moving through our economy. It's near historic lows. Without that cash moving through our economy, the Fed can sit there and add digits to a screen morning, noon, and night. And without that cash moving, we're not going to see any meaningful inflation until the cash starts to move. Now, that is something that goes back to the debt bubble that I've been speaking about for the longest time. And now Alan Greenspan is saying there's a potential for a big sell-off here in the bond market, which would cause rates to spike. And, he sounds like me. It's what I've been saying for years. He must watch my channel, seriously. But once that starts to happen, and I'm convinced we're going to start to see the action unfold in the debt market first, and that cash starts to move, all of these extra bills, digital and or otherwise, are simply going to chase the same amount of goods. And then we're going to get the potential to melt down the dollar big time and a potential hyperinflationary event. And the Fed will be powerless to stop it. They can't, at that particular point, honestly, that's when the debt-based model will melt down. And the only fix to it is a completely new system. Unfortunately, I don't believe it's going to be a wealth-based system or a commodity-backed system, because if that were the case, the central banks would have to give up their power. Again, they issue debt. It's their only instrument is to issue debt in greater and greater amounts. So they don't want to give up that power.
So you said the Fed is going to kill the dollar. So is this it? Are we close to the pop?
I think at the same, what we need to look at to be able to gauge everything with regard to the financial markets is just look at the debt market. The debt market or the bond market is the biggest market of them all. And every single asset, everything in a real market environment is supposed to price off of what is happening in the debt market. The dollar is a unit of debt as well. Federal Reserve has been on a buying binge, quantitative easing 1, 2, 3. They've never stopped. The Fed is buying bonds now. So anyone that thinks QE has ended, it never ended. And how can I prove that? Very simply. The Federal Reserve can't just say, oh, we're going to keep interest rates low. They have to get into the market and make it happen. So to keep rates where they are, either individuals need to be buying that debt or some other entity needs to be buying it, and we know who that is. It's the Federal Reserve, who has a balance sheet now. In other words, their debt load is larger than the GDP of most countries. So, and they've been talking about, normalizing their abnormal balance sheet. This is their words, not mine, which they're not going to do for the foreseeable future. Their balance sheet is going to continue to inflate. So knowing that, we're going to continue to see pressure on the dollar. The dollar has nowhere to go in this environment but lower. The Fed cannot raise rates. Maybe we'll get a token rate at the end of the year, 25 basis points affecting the short end of the curve. That's it. They're not going to touch their balance sheet. This is all dollar negative moving forward. They've created a very bad spot for themselves here. And I can't imagine a way that they're going to be. They never had a plan to unload their balance sheet. Understand, when this whole market tried to correct in 2008, it really wasn't a crash here. The stock market, the currency markets, the housing markets, all of these markets have one job and one job only, and that is to determine fair value, period. When you have entities like world central banks, which have now bought nearly $15 trillion collectively of assets around the world, nothing is real. No asset whatsoever has a real price discovery mechanism behind it. Malinvestments across the board, bubbles forming all over the place. So the market is going to do its job at one point. We do not have a free market anymore, any of the markets, because the world central banks have taken the largest part of the market, the debt market, taken it over. But there's going to be a moment of correction. And that's going to be epic when it happens. I have no idea when it's going to happen. I don't even speculate on it anymore. All I want to do, and for everybody, is for us to capitalize on what's going on here, because we don't have to lay down here and be fleeced. We can understand that there's ways to make this work for us, and that's really what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to make people understand is you don't have to sit down here and get melted down by the situation. Embrace it in some ways, because there's no way out of it. So you might as well try to make it work for yourself.
Yeah, and finally, Drudge reported yesterday, headline news, 20 trillion in national debt. We know it's a lot higher than that. And Trump and Pelosi and Schumer talked about completely getting rid of the debt ceiling. That sounds pretty crazy, right? Because then there'll be no limit on spending and printing.
Well, there never was. I mean, the debt ceiling is an arbitrary thing that they raise every single time. We can't stop doing this. That's what I want people to understand here. They can never stop borrowing, ever. The debt is going to get higher and higher and higher until it reaches a point here where we cannot pay the interest on it anymore. And that's when the whole thing it's going to melt down. There's no doubt about it. That's the whole issue that people don't understand. Oh, why can't we pay it off? They can't pay it off because that's the nature of the beast. The nature of the beast is that it requires more debt to be borrowed into existence. Donald Trump knows this very, very well. He understands money, cash. He knows how it works. And then they all do. Look, they're not dumb. These people that sit there in public office, they think we're dumb. And most people are, unfortunately, very dumb. And they have no idea how the system works and how we can never pay the debt back, how we have to continually borrow more and more. So they can do whatever they want to do with this thing. Again, maybe we are reaching that point of maximum saturation here. I don't know. I think we should have been there a long time ago, but world central banks have gotten very crafty. Now they're buying everything. We've never seen this before, where world central banks have done what they have done since 2008 just to try to keep things from completely imploding. But what people don't understand is nothing has been fixed. The 2008 event was the market trying to do its job. establishing a fair value. World Central Bank said, no, we don't want you to do that. We're going to reinflate bubbles, reinflate the debt bubble that pulled up the stock market, that pulled up housing prices with it. We're in the same boat, but we're much worse off now than we were then. Why? Because consumers here, especially in the United States, people are in more debt than they have ever been. We're at a historic high. So you can understand how this is going to play out moving forward. People are in a lot of trouble, and they have no idea what's coming down the pike. What can potentially come down the pike here could literally be, like I wrote in that article, global debt in the human bubble, for the lack of a better term, a biblical event that has the potential to affect every human being on the planet.
Well, is this why we're seeing gold breaking out slightly and Bitcoin is going crazy? It's going straight up, like you predicted.
Yeah. Well, look, the price action of gold and silver is not real either. We know that there's a lot going on here. Bank after bank after bank gets caught red-handed manipulating the price of gold. Nothing happens to them. They get like a hand slap, a small fine. So that's who that should give people an idea that's where they need to be here, betting against the debt, becoming their own central bank. My premise is since day one. And with regard to Bitcoin here, this is just people out there who are seeking dollar alternatives. And that's why we're seeing this run up here with cryptocurrencies. Gold and silver should be exponentially higher than what they are here in this environment. But until there's a real price discovery mechanism, until the fakery is revealed, again, the regulators turn a blind eye. There's no one here that has the back of the gold or silver investor, but that's fine. I say use this, again, as a weapon against them. If they want to suppress the price, good. Let them suppress it all they want, because I can promise you that this guy sitting right here is going to acquire more and more and more. I've been buying gold and silver since it was like $6, and I bought it all the way up to like 40-something thousand, and bought it all the way down, and I will continue to do that. It's my favorite asset, bar none. Physical silver. I talk about it all the time. I think it's the most undervalued asset in the history of the world. Things like Bitcoin here, I don't know where they're going to go here in the future. I think it's going much, much higher. My target price was 5,000 on Bitcoin. We're almost there. And I still think that's going higher too. Again, it's because the dollar is losing its ability to purchase things, and the Fed has promised to kill it. I take them at their word. They are going to do this. So for you dollar bills out here, you're in a lot of trouble because you got the central bank against you here.
In the last couple of weeks, two big things seem to have happened. Now, on September 1st, Asian Review reports China sees New World Order with oil benchmark backed by gold. Now, that's a big deal, right? I mean, Saddam and Gaddafi tried to get out of petrodollar, and they were both killed.
Yeah, we saw what happened to them, right? Well, I think that's an interesting point that you make up. I think people do. What is backing the U.S. dollar? Are aircraft carriers, submarines, nuclear warheads, whatever, SEAL teams. This is what's backing the dollar here. It's all about the petrodollar here. The entire Vietnam War was fought to establish the U.S. dollar as the world reserve, to establish a petrodollar system. Most people have heard me just say that, and they have no idea. Even if they're in the military, they have no idea of what I just said here, but I urge people to do a little research about it here. World central banks are not going to give up their power, and their power exists in their ability to issue debt in greater and greater amounts. They will not allow a commodity-backed currency. They won't do it. And that's why we're seeing a lot of suppression here, deliberate price suppression with regard to gold, with regard to silver here. But there's going to be, when the COMEX is not able to deliver what they supposedly have, that's when we're going to end up seeing these things establish their fair value. I believe at this point, for every 1 ounce of gold that's at the COMEX, and I could be way off, to the downside, I think there's 400 claims. Like, in other words, 400 people think they own the same ounce. So that should give you an idea of what's going on here. But no one bats an eye here. The regulators look away. The SEC doesn't want to look at it. And they won't, because they're part of the problem. They also understand the nature of the beast and what's going on here. But what we do know is investors around the world are getting rid of their dollars. Investors, the big guns here, get dumping their dollars. They're trading these things in for gold, silver, the physical assets, and it's central banks. Same thing, governments. And that's what we need to be doing too. When you have a politician or someone like Jamie Dimon, for example, who came out today bad-mouthing Bitcoin upside down, backwards, and sideways. Why does not Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, want you to hold Bitcoin? Because he has a vested interest in loaning you dollars, or that's his thing. And there's no one on this earth that can prove to me, I don't care what you say, that Jamie Dimon himself does not have a large chunk of Bitcoin in his portfolio. So he can say whatever he wants here. People like Ben Bernanke talking about gold not being money. And when it was asked why central banks hold gold, well, they hold it for tradition. It's insane. It really is. But I think people are starting to get it. I would hope they are. I really believe that there is a natural selection occurring here. Those people that are smart enough to understand that the system is rigged against them, and those with a voice out there, people like Jamie Dimon, do not have their best interest in mind, and do the polar opposite of what guys like that are saying, and you're going to be okay.
Also, do you read about Stephen Mnuchin and Mitch McConnell visiting Fort Knox after, since 1974? It's the first time, I believe. That's pretty weird, right?
Look, I don't think the gold is there. I really don't. I don't think the gold has been there for decades. I don't know where it is, but I don't think it's there anymore. And it's insane that we're not allowed to go look at this stuff. Like, we can't audit this stuff. Why? It's so obvious as to why if it's there. Well, why don't they give public tours of it? Why don't they show us the gold? It's unbelievable. But it's all part of the same thing. And it's just a grand manipulation and twisting of people's ability to understand and see what's really going on right under their noses. It's a disgusting turn of events that we're seeing here in this world. And unfortunately, I think these are going to get worse before they get better.
Now, Jim Rickards has said that when the system crashes, the only clean balance sheet left is with the IMF. And they've already prepared a world currency in the SDR. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think they're manipulating us into a world currency like the SDR, or killing the dollar?
Well, I tell you, I do believe that the system we're in is dying. And there is no doubt in my mind that they already do have some backup system here that they're going to institute. Again, the central banks, the IMF, they're not going to give up control. So they're going to offer us all something and make it sound like it's the greatest thing that's ever been created here since sliced bread. But it's, of course, going to be, again, in their interest. It's not going to be a wealth-based system. It's very sad that we allowed this to happen. Our forefathers here, they did not want this. They did not want us to give our power away to private banks and let them run our financial system. It's unbelievable what we've allowed to happen. And people just sit there idly by and they're thinking everything is okay. Meanwhile, every day they go off to work, and every day they get poorer, despite the fact that they see more money in their bank account that they think is there. That's not even there because of the fractional reserve system. It's an unbelievable situation here. I have no doubt that we are going to end up in another situation where we're going to have the credit markets freeze up once again. Cash is going to become unavailable. Again, and that's really what happened last time. People forget what really happened in 2008 was that the credit markets froze and businesses couldn't function. There was no institutional lending going on, and that is going to happen again, but to a much greater scale, in my opinion, moving forward. So people can just kiss whatever cash they think they might have away anyway, and while people like Jamie Dimon are bad-mouthing Bitcoin. It's incredible, honestly. I laugh when I hear that, when people say, oh no, you got to stay away from Bitcoin. Oh, you want to stay in your dollar? Your dollar is digital as well. What people need to do is go to the Federal Reserve's own website. Go to the Federal Reserve's own website and look up how much cash is actually in existence. It's 1.4 trillion. The rest of it is digital. The whole national debt is digital. It doesn't exist. It's not in the elemental chart. It's fairy dust. Does this sound familiar? Anyway, it's the truth. So, I don't know. It's an ugly situation there, but I think what people need to do is put this into perspective and say, what can I do for myself? Because no one else is going to help you to give you the best chance of coming out ahead here. And it's just so simple. It just goes back to my two premises since day one. Bet against the debt bubble. Become your own central bank by holding a hard asset. Of course, you got to keep some fiat dollars around here. Yeah, do that because you got to transact in them, but don't be hoarding these things because the Fed is going to kill it. They're determined to kill it. The dollar's been going down almost in a straight line since December, and it's got nowhere else to go but lower. I don't know.
Unfortunately, a lot of Americans are living like paycheck to paycheck and they don't have a lot of savings. So would you recommend for them to just stack silver coins, because it's really cheap right now?
Absolutely. In fact, I wrote an article today on my Steemit blog where I said I think the sale on gold and silver is about to end because the dollar again continues to go lower, and they're going to keep trying to manipulate the price lower, but there's going to be a breaking point where it won't work anymore, and that's again when people can't deliver on it, especially the gold and silver that's supposedly at the COMEX. Who knows if it's really there? Who knows if it's not? I don't know. Let's go have a look at it, you and me. Let's go down together. I don't know. But, it's really a shame here. And I'll tell you what really, really bothers me about that whole thing, what the Fed did when people lost their – look, some of my very best friends lost their houses here, everything. And I think what the Fed did was really criminal here. They went in. They relieved the banks of that burden. They bought all of the mortgage-backed securities off of the banks. Then they reinflated a housing bubble to make those distressed properties worth something. And now they're talking about dumping their balance sheet. It's unbelievable. It really is. It's criminal in my opinion.
So in the short term, you think the market is going to continue to rally?
Yeah, I do. I think that the elements are in place here for the stock market to move higher because the Fed is out of the way. The debt bubble is going to continue to get bigger. The dollar is going to be pushed lower, which is good for multinational companies. So you can expect the stock market to continue higher here until it doesn't. And in the meantime, take advantage of it. Trade this market. Rip its face off. It's not that hard to do.
So in the long term, the Fed is out of options and there's nothing Trump can do?
Are there other options? I mean, the most basic ones is just understand where we are. We're underneath the biggest, most Frankenstein monster bubble the world has ever seen, and that is the debt bubble. It's going to pop. It's going to pop because we know this to be a fact because every single bubble that has ever been created in the financial world has burst before it with devastating consequences. And this one is the mother of them all. And when it does burst, people, for the most part, are going to be left desperate and destitute. So try to get yourself on the right side of this right now. And it just, again, goes back to my premises of becoming your own central bank and betting against that debt.
So you as a professional trader, you convert your trading profits into a hard asset, gold, silver, or Bitcoin?
All of the above. I own Bitcoin. I own a good amount of Bitcoin. I own a lot of gold. I own a lot of silver, my favorite asset. And I'll continue to do that. I'll continue to diversify out of the dollar. I think it's the one asset where you do not want to be in is the dollar, or debt for that matter at all.
What is the average day for Gregory Mannarino like? Do you get up and you look at the Dow or S&P or bond yield, or what do you do?
My day never stops. I mean, I'm checking the overseas markets when they open. I'm looking at stock futures, commodities futures. I dream about it. Then I wake up in the morning and I come down here to my office and I say, okay, what's going on? I look at my charts. I try to figure out what I'm going to do, how I'm going to move cash around. I have a very interesting life, very complicated. But that's pretty much it. It never stops for me. I'm always involved in this. Around the clock. It never leaves my brain. I wish it would. But I probably work 80, 100 hours a week, maybe more than that. I don't even know. It's constant. But I think in life, whatever you do, if you want to be successful at it, you have to become that thing. You can't just say, this is what I do. This is what you are. And that's kind of how I feel about myself right now. I am the markets. I really am. I'm like I don't know, like a machine in that way. It's kind of crazy.
Is there anything that you'd like to add?
Sure. I tell people to go to my website, traderschoice.net. There's free stuff there for you. I opened up a free chat room, which I pay for. It's for free for anybody who wants it. I have a free ebook, which it's absolutely free. I don't ask for anything. Just go to my website. There's a lot of stuff there to download. My ebook's free. Other stuff that's free. The chat room is free. Go enjoy it. Have some fun. Make some new friends.
How will you short the market? Are you going to short the Dow, the S&P?
Probably the S&P. I just buy puts all over the place at one particular point. I don't care which way the market goes, up or down, don't matter to me. I just want to capitalize on it. I'll be moving my money all over the place. I have no idea where, but at this point, but it'll go somewhere.
All right, Greg. Thank you very much. Very kind of you. I'm a big fan. I follow your videos every day, your steamy blog as well. Thank you, Gregory Mannarino, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
Illuminati-free zone. For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? The Pork Chop Report.